Confidence is tricky because so many of us think it has to look a certain way. We've been told confidence means being bold, being outspoken, being the loudest one in the room. But here's the truth. Confident women don't copy someone else's version of confidence. They define it on their own terms, and that's what makes it real. You see, when you chase somebody else's idea of confidence, you're always performing. You're always adjusting, checking yourself, wondering if you measure up. It's like wearing a pair of shoes that don't fit. They might look good on the outside, but you're in pain with every step. Real confidence. It feels natural. It's comfortable. It belongs to you. Think about this. One woman might feel most confident when she's commanding the stage, microphone in hand, all eyes on her. Another woman might feel most confident sitting quietly in the back of a meeting, taking notes, but knowing she'll speak up when it actually matters. One isn't better than the other. The difference is, they're both choosing the version that fits them, not the version the world told them to wear, and that's where so many people trip up. They think confidence is a mold, something you step into. But when you step into somebody else's mold, you shrink yourself to fit it. Confident women don't shrink, they expand. They make space for their own definition. The way you define your confidence comes down to what you value most. Do you value clarity? Do you value calm? Do you value courage in small steps instead of big leaps? Then let that be your version. You don't need to shout if your power is in listening. You don't need to dominate if your gift is collaboration. Confidence isn't about matching the volume of the person next to you. It's about matching the truth of who you are. Here's the secret nobody tells you. People respect authenticity more than they respect performance. You might impress someone for a while by pretending to be confident like someone else, but you'll connect with people deeply when you show up in your own way. And when you connect, that's when influence starts to grow. The strongest women I've seen aren't the ones trying to prove their strength every second. They're the ones who already know who they are. They don't ask for permission to exist the way they exist. They don't wait for approval before they trust their choices. And because they've defined confidence on their own terms, they don't have to force it. It's effortless. So maybe for you, confidence looks like walking into a room with your head high, even if your voice shakes when you speak. Maybe it looks like finally saying no to something you've been tolerating for far too long. Or maybe it looks like pursuing something quietly without broadcasting it, because you know not everything needs an audience. All of those are valid. All of those are confidence if you choose to own them. Here's what happens when you define confidence for yourself. You stop competing. You stop comparing. You stop looking sideways at what she's doing, and you start looking inward at what you need. And when you live like that, confidence stops being a mask you wear. It becomes the skin you live in. The secret confident women know is this. They get to write the definition, and once you write your own, you never have to borrow someone else's again. Confidence doesn't always show up in the words we speak. Sometimes the most powerful thing a woman can bring into a room isn't her voice. It's her silence, and I don't mean the kind of silence that comes from being afraid or unsure. I mean the silence that is chosen, the silence that is deliberate, the silence that says, I don't need to prove anything to you. When you see a confident woman, she doesn't rush to fill every pause in the conversation. She doesn't scramble to add something just so she won't look out of place. She's comfortable letting the air sit still for a moment, because she knows her value doesn't come from how much space she takes up with her words, but from how much strength she carries in her presence. Think about how most people handle silence. It makes them nervous. They want to break it, patch it, fix it. But a confident woman uses it. She lets silence work for her, because in silence, people start to lean in. They start to notice her body language, her energy, her presence, and sometimes that speaks louder than any sentence she could have said. Let me give you a picture. Imagine someone in a meeting who argues, who interrupts, who dominates every discussion just to look like they are in charge. And then imagine another woman who sits back, listens, waits, and then says one clear sentence at exactly the right moment. Who do you think the room will respect more? It's not about who said the most. It's about who made the most impact. Confidence is knowing your words carry weight, so you don't waste them. You don't scatter them just to be heard. You place them carefully, intentionally, like arrows that know their target. That's why confident women don't mind pauses. They know silence isn't emptiness, it's power. There's also another layer to this. Silence is where self-control lives. It's where you pause instead of reacting. It's where you hold your ground instead of defending yourself to people who aren't even listening. A woman who can sit in silence when someone's trying to rattle her, when someone's pushing for a reaction, that's a woman people remember. Because that silence says, I won't be shaken. But silence isn't just about others. It's also about yourself. Some of the most confident choices you'll ever make happen in the quiet, when you're alone, when nobody's watching, when you're listening to your own thoughts. That's where you hear the truth about what you want, what you need, and what you're no longer willing to accept. A lot of people think confidence is loud, but it doesn't have to be. Confidence can be soft. It can be measured. It can be the pause before the answer. It can be the strength to say nothing when everything inside of you wants to react. That's not weakness. That's mastery. So if you want to carry yourself with confidence, don't just think about what you'll say. Think about what you'll choose not to say. Think about how you'll use silence as part of your presence. Because when you do, people will notice. They'll feel that calm strength. They'll sense that you're not desperate to prove yourself. The truth is, confident women don't just speak with their voice. They speak with their silence. And sometimes that silence says everything. There's something really important about confidence that most people get backwards. We're taught from a young age to look for validation outside of ourselves. We wait for the compliment, the approval, the pat on the back. And don't get me wrong, it feels good when someone notices your work, your effort, your presence. But confident women know they can't survive on that alone. Compliments are nice, but they aren't fuel. They don't wait around for someone else to tell them they're good enough, because they've already told themselves first. When your confidence relies only on outside voices, you're basically putting yourself, worth up for auction. Whoever shouts the loudest, whoever gives or withholds approval, ends up controlling how you feel about yourself. That's fragile, that's exhausting, and it will always leave you chasing after something you can't hold on to. But when you validate yourself, when you clap for yourself before anyone else does, you take that power back. You stop begging for it. Here's the shift. Confident women don't measure themselves by who notices them. They measure themselves by whether they're living in alignment with their own standards. Did they show up fully? Did they stay true to their values? Did they push themselves in a way that makes them proud? If the answer is yes, they don't need applause to confirm it. The applause is extra. It's not the foundation. And let me tell you, that kind of self-validation changes everything. Because once you have it, you walk differently. You speak differently. You don't walk into a room hoping someone notices you. You walk in already noticing yourself. You don't post something online and anxiously wait for likes. You post it because you already liked it. You don't chase after people's approval. You attract the right people by the way you carry your own. It's like this. Think of two women. One gets a new job, and she's waiting for everyone to congratulate her so she can feel good about it. The other gets the same job, and before a single person says a word, she's already celebrating herself because she knows the effort it took to get there. Both women achieved something, but only one of them owns it without needing permission to feel proud. That's the difference, and here's the other side of it. When you rely on external validation, you're vulnerable to criticism in the same way you're vulnerable to praise. If praise builds you, then criticism can destroy you. But confident women don't collapse when someone disagrees with them or tries to tear them down. Why? Because they already validated themselves. They don't need every voice around them to be supportive because the loudest voice in their life is their own. That doesn't mean you ignore encouragement or that compliments don't matter. They're still meaningful. They're still uplifting, but they're not oxygen. They're not the thing you need to survive, because if you make them oxygen, you'll suffocate every time the room gets quiet. Confidence isn't waiting for someone else to clap. Confidence is being the one who claps first. It's standing in front of the mirror and saying, "I'm proud of me," even if no one else ever says it out loud. And when you can do that, you're unshakable. Because at the end of the day, the most confident women don't wait to be validated. They give that validation to themselves, and that's why they never run out of it. One of the clearest signs of confidence is the way a woman handles her boundaries. Confident women choose boundaries over approval every single time, and let me tell you, that's not always easy, because for most of us, there's this deep desire to be liked, to be accepted, to avoid disappointing people. We think saying yes will make people value us more, but what actually happens is the opposite. When you say yes to everything, you stretch yourself thin, you burn yourself out, and eventually you start to resent the very people you are trying to please. Confident women understand this. They know that every time they say yes to something that doesn't serve them, they're saying no to themselves, and that's not confidence, that's self-abandonment. So they practice the courage of saying no. And here's the thing, their no doesn't come with an apology. It doesn't come with a long list of excuses or a nervous laugh. It's just no, simple, clear, calm. That's the beauty of it. Because when your no is solid, your yes becomes so much more meaningful. People know that when you agree to something, it's real, it's intentional. You're not doing it out of guilt or fear of rejection. You're doing it because it matters to you. That's the kind of yes people can trust. And here's something else. Boundaries aren't just about other people. They're about yourself too. A confident woman sets boundaries with her own habits, her own patterns, her own excuses. She knows when she's slipping into things that don't serve her, and she steps back. She protects her peace not just from the outside world, but from the parts of herself that want to settle for less. That takes strength, that takes self-respect. Now, I want you to think about the last time you said yes to something you didn't want to do. Remember how it felt in your chest, that tightness, that frustration, that quiet voice inside saying, "Why did I agree to this?" That's the cost of approval. You trade your peace for someone else's comfort, and you walk away feeling smaller. That's the exact opposite of confidence. On the other hand, think about the last time you said no. Even if it was hard, even if someone didn't like it, there was a weight lifted off you, wasn't there? Because saying no isn't about rejection. It's about direction. It's about steering your life in alignment with what actually matters. That's why confident women don't hesitate to draw the line. They're not being rude. They're being rooted, and you know what happens when you live like that. People start respecting you more, not less. They may not always like your boundaries, but they will come to trust them. They'll realize you're not someone who can be manipulated or guilt-tripped. You're someone who honors yourself first. And when you honor yourself, others are more likely to honor you too. At the end of the day, confidence isn't about making everyone else happy. It's about having the strength to protect what makes you whole. And that means choosing boundaries over approval every single time. Confidence isn't about performance. It's not about putting on a show or trying to convince people you're something you're not. Confident women understand this better than anyone. They know their strength isn't in how flashy they look, how loud they are, or how perfectly they can play a role. Their strength comes from presence, not performance. Presence is different. Presence doesn't need an audience. It doesn't need applause. Presence is simply the way you show up, grounded in who you are. You can feel it when someone walks into a room and they don't have to do anything extra. They're not trying to prove themselves. They're not bending over backwards to be noticed. They're just fully themselves, and people naturally gravitate toward that. Performance, on the other hand, is exhausting. It means you're always thinking about what others want to see, what you need to say, how you need to act, so they'll like you or respect you. It's like carrying around a heavy mask, and maybe it works for a little while. You get the laugh, you get the nod of approval, you get the recognition, but deep down you know it's not sustainable, because the second you stop performing, you feel exposed. You feel empty, and that's not confidence, that's insecurity dressed up in costume. Confident women choose presence over that. They don't perform, they express, and there's a big difference. Performance is about impressing people. Expression is about revealing yourself. And when you're secure enough to simply express who you are, people feel it. They can tell it's real. They may not always agree with you, but they'll respect the authenticity. It's like this. Imagine two women giving a presentation. One is performing, every word rehearsed, every gesture exaggerated, every moment trying to convince the audience she belongs on that stage. The other woman walks up, speaks simply, directly, with her own style, even letting her imperfections show. Which one do you think feels more powerful? The second one, not because she was perfect, but because she was present. She owned the space as herself. Here's the key. Presence doesn't mean you're the loudest person in the room. It doesn't mean you dominate the spotlight. Presence means wherever you are, people know you're there. They feel your calm, they feel your strength, they feel your steadiness. You don't need to fight for attention because your energy already carries weight, and presence doesn't have to be loud. Sometimes presence is quiet confidence, steady eye contact, relaxed body language, or even just the ability to really listen. Sometimes it's the pause before you speak, the calm way you handle a challenge, or the dignity you hold in a difficult conversation. None of that is performance, that's presence. What makes presence so powerful is that it frees you. You don't need to keep up an act. You don't need to keep checking if people are impressed. You can just be. And that kind of confidence is magnetic because it's rare. Most people are stuck performing. They're trying to be liked, trying to fit in, trying to measure up. But when someone shows up fully as themselves, without the act, without the pretense, it stands out. That's the secret. Confidence isn't about being the star of the show. It's about carrying yourself in such a way that no matter where you are, people know your presence matters. Confidence gets talked about a lot, but there's something deeper that often gets overlooked. You can't build true confidence if you don't have self-respect first. Confidence without self-respect is fragile. It looks strong on the outside, but it cracks the second it's tested. That's why confident women make self-respect the foundation of everything they do. Think about it this way. Confidence is how you present yourself to the world, but self-respect is how you treat yourself when nobody's watching. Confidence is the surface, but self-respect is the root. And if the root isn't strong, the surface won't last. You can walk tall, you can speak boldly, you can look the part, but if you don't honor yourself in the quiet moments, all of that will eventually collapse. Self-respect shows up in the choices you make when it would be easier to settle. It's in the standards you set for how you let people treat you. It's in the way you keep promises to yourself, even when no one else would ever know if you broke them. That's the stuff that builds real confidence, the kind that can't be shaken. Confident women don't lower their standards just to feel accepted. They don't sacrifice their values just to fit in. They know that the moment they start disrespecting themselves, they're trading away the very thing their confidence depends on. So instead of chasing approval, they honor their boundaries. Instead of giving in to shortcuts, they hold themselves accountable. Instead of pretending they're okay with less, they wait for what they truly deserve. And here's the beauty of it. When you respect yourself, confidence becomes natural. You don't have to fake it, because you already know you're living in alignment with your worth. You know you're not selling yourself short. You know you can trust yourself. And when you can trust yourself, that's when confidence stops being an act and starts being a way of life. A lot of people think confidence comes from achievements, from titles, from appearance. And sure, those things can give you a temporary boost. But if deep down you don't respect yourself, if you know you've been compromising your values, if you know you've been ignoring your own needs, all of those achievements will feel hollow. You'll still feel like something is missing. That's because confidence without self-respect is just decoration. It's surface level, it doesn't last. But when you have self-respect, even in your hardest seasons, even when things aren't going perfectly, you carry a steadiness that can't be taken away, because your worth isn't tied to the situation. It's tied to the way you honor yourself, and that's something no one else can control. So maybe confidence for you isn't about walking into the room and owning it right away. Maybe it starts smaller. Maybe it starts with keeping that promise you made to yourself. Maybe it starts with saying no when you'd usually give in. Maybe it starts with recognizing that you deserve more than the bare minimum. Every time you choose self-respect, you're adding another layer to your confidence, and those layers build into something unshakable. That's the secret confident women leave by. They don't just look confident. They are confident because their confidence is rooted in respect for themselves. And once you build on that foundation, no one can take it from you.